Flight of Pelicans, when he launched the Rat Island Foundation in St. Lucia, was lamenting the loss of charity and compassion and the erosion of community in the Caribbean over the past 20 years. And he said, just as the flight of pelicans has disappeared from our sunset landscapes, so too has compassion and charity and community disappeared. What we had, and he spoke too about an old tradition that we have in St. Lucia. We have it all over the Caribbean. In St. Lucia, it's known as the Kudme, it's known as Lend Hand, as Helping Hand, whatever you call it. But it is essentially a tradition of working together. And he spoke about it as charity as an obligation. The type of obligation that would carry a sick person in the old days with successive bearers carrying that person to the hospital, or the hands that help to heave and launch a canoe into the sea so that the community can have fish. And what we are here about this week is a continuation of that tradition. In the early childhood sector in particular, for the last 20 years, we've had funding from a variety of sources. The principal actor on the landscape has been the Bernard Van Leer Foundation, and there's been UNICEF. There are other minor actors who have given help. We have unfortunately over the years developed a tradition and a culture of mendicancy. We believe in the donor grant. And at the end of every donor grant, everything falls flat and we start from scratch. And we reinvent the wheel over and over. And then we import genetically modified products into our landscape. So there's, reading for phonics, speed for phonics, everything that's on the 1-800 TV advertorial, we bring it into our systems at great cost to ourselves. And we ignore the simple traditions of compassion and community that give us the resilience that we have as a people. And that is what the RCP and this CCSI experience is all about. It is all about taking what you have from your own soil. A simple Jamaican woman, Joyce Jarrett, looking at her community, its conditions, the needs of its children. At the time Joyce Jarrett started RCP, we in the Caribbean didn't have a clue, and perhaps in North America, they didn't have a clue about all this brain research thing that we're talking about now, that now provides a solid scientific justification as to why early childhood is so absolute and necessary. But she did it because she recognized children were falling through the cracks. There were gaps that had to be filled. It was a big sinkhole in the education system in the Caribbean. And she made it happen. She shaped a solution. And her solution was not paid for, made in USA or bought by Dutch guilders or anything else. It was bought by simple people in her community, not intellectuals from the university, but simple community, barefoot young people wanting to make a difference, singing songs with the children, interacting with them, stimulating them. We saw some of that today. I hope some of you did. Nothing is perfect in our environment. Things take time to grow. And if we ever come to a stage where we believe that any model or any product that we have is final and perfect, then that is the end of our existence. Because it is a process of evolution. It is a process of evolution. And I keep reminding people of that immemorable quote from Amilcar Cabral, that the biggest battle we have to fight in the third world is a struggle against our own weaknesses and contradictions. Okay? We have to constantly ask ourselves questions about what we are doing. As perfect as it may seem in any given moment, can we do this better? I have a big battle on my hands in CFC. Because when I came into CFC, most people thought that CFC was perfect. I mean, we've been there 30 years, we've relatively few problems, we're doing good, we're recognized by everybody. We have a monopoly on exams in the region. But as I said to them, what got you through the last 30 years ain't going to get you through the next 5 years, because the landscape is changing and the competitive environment is changing. And we now have to ensure that we are the best at whatever we do. We cannot sit in a comfort zone of complacency, right? We have to be our own harshest critics so that we can perfect what we do. Would you back and say it's a competitive world for low budget people? Don't need a dime and spending a nickel, right? This year, 2011 examinations, Cambridge is under investigation by Ofsted in the US. I don't want to back up my competitors, but we've had 8 major errors in their exams this year. If CXC had 8 major errors in their exams, everybody would be calling for our closure and return to the colonial bosses. Right? So we have to be the best at what we do. And today's session, after the last few days of sharing experiences, looking at best practices, looking at the latest scientific research, is about deciding where do we go together, right? I'm going to do a quick presentation that looks at what the foundation is about, our perspective. It's an evolving picture. Let me make clear that just as I've called on you to be critical, we also intend to be critical. Several participants here have asked me, how come you all don't have an early childhood expert on the board? The answer is simple. When this started, those of us who are on the board started off as a strategy group. And it was a deliberate selection because we had people from the private sector. Never before has the private sector in the Caribbean been as engaged as it has been in this issue of early childhood. And that is largely due to the fact that we have somebody like Gregory Gans, who some of you may not know him, but he is like the, what's his name, Timothy Geithner of the US. I'm sure you all know Timothy Geithner, right? Hello? Did somebody say they don't? You know Timothy Geithner, and you know his role in the economic meltdown and what they did to turn the banks around. Well, sad, you know Timothy Geithner? This is the Caribbean Timothy Geithner. Gregory Gans, turning around failing banks in the Caribbean. And by virtue of that insertion in the financial landscape of the Caribbean has been able to bring the private sector on board in a new modality of partnership. In terms of the technical work, we have all of you here who are the experts, who are the practitioners. Our job is to make ourselves, I think it was said earlier by one of my colleagues, redundant as a board. This is about a Kudme effort to create an indigenous Caribbean capacity that can take responsibility in a multi-sectoral way for the field of early childhood education. We cannot rely on politicians who have 5-year time horizons. We cannot rely on technocrats and bureaucrats who believe that their job is just to push paper. While we're pushing paper, lives are being lost. The holes we entered into this morning are the places where the impact of the public service, whether it be in education or health or whatever, is supposed to be felt. These are the people who justify our existence as public servants. So,